Hi, I'm Mike Hutjens, Extension Dairy Specialist at the University of Illinois. Today's module will discuss using Spartan3. Spartan3 was released by Michigan State University in 2011. It runs very similar to Spartan2, so those of you that like that program, you'll like this one because it has the same format. Added to it a rumen model and the NRC 2001 requirements. This module will demonstrate some of the programming flexibility and opportunities when building rations. You can download a demo copy at the following address listed on the screen. Let's begin the demonstration looking at some of the different screens. The first one will be describing the cow. You'll see on the right side you have all these choices, mid-lactation, early lactation. You use that arrow and it'll scroll up and down depending on what stage of lactation you want to be in. Lactation number is straightforward, first, second, third, whichever you wish. Days in milk is critical. As days in milk gets very short, let's say 40 or 30 days in milk, you will lose dry matter intake based on the NRC requirement guideline table. So be very careful. If you don't want the computer taking dry matter away from you, keep this over at least 100 days in milk. Total body weight, you can see on this one, shows this cow has some growing left to do. If you do not want to get any growth phase, you will put the mature body weight and total body weight the same. Production information is straightforward. Target is what you're striving for. The actual may be exactly what's happening on the farm. This is where your lead factor will come into play, and in most cases, people are adding 10 to 15 pounds lead factor, especially when the price of milk is favorable. You can see this is on true protein, so make sure you have true protein, not crude protein. That difference is 0.2 of a point. So if you're in Canada or Mexico or other countries, be sure you subtract 0.2 from the total protein that you have. And again, lactose, you could adjust that if you wish as well. You'll see then you have a chance to put the farmer's milk price in there, and you can put it in either way. And then the actual dry matter consumed per cow is entered on this slide as well. Then you can see down below, the NRC gives you some information already. The computer is saying that based on this one, we are expecting these cows to consume about a little bit less dry matter than what is listed on the above slide, and gives you a nutrient density here in net energy lactation or metabolizable energy. Once you are happy with this, then you would go over there and check OK. That's important. And nothing happens until you check OK, otherwise you're stuck. Then we're going to look at setting daily body weight parameters. Again, more information here. You can see in the top one, current information. We've got that same body weight from the previous entry we had in here. The non-pregnancy body condition score weight will be the same here, mature body weight. So there you can see no gain coming from pregnancy. Now, obviously, if this cow has been pregnant for 190 days to 220 days, as we get closer and closer, you'll start seeing a pregnancy requirement being added in at this point. The next block looks at frame growth. So if I have a 2-year-old cow that has some growing to do yet, this will add in. And remember, if you look at our chart up above, we are missing about 50 pounds of true growth there. And so this computer program is going to add about 1/4 pound of frame growth. Not confused with the next block, which looks at target body condition score. This will have more fat and some associated protein with that. And so you can see again, we were at a body condition score 3. We need to gain about 99 pounds in 100 days. So again, this computer will now add in another 0.99 pounds of gain. So you can see we can adjust our requirement here for pregnancy, for true growth, which is frame growth, and then body condition score. Bottom line, we will try to add about 1.21 pounds per day on this program. Next, we're going to build our feed library. In other words, selecting those feeds that we're going to feed to our dairy cow. You can see you'll go to the master key here, to the library key, and you'll hit the master feed library. You will click on that and you'll open that library, and then you'll have a chance to pick from a number of different feedstuffs listed in the library. We've now opened the feed library, and you can see we're starting out alphabetically with alfalfa meal at 17% protein, and you can see they're alphabetically arranged. So you will either cursor down or you can slide the bar down and pick off the feeds that you want. For example, if I wanted alfalfa meal, I've got my cursor there. I would then hit the add selected, and that will pop over on the right side, and I can go down my list and add the feeds that I want. If you make a mistake and you want to start totally over, over, you would hit remove all feeds. If you want to remove one feed, you highlight that feed, and you can take that one off the list. So you'll be adding anywhere from probably 10 to 15 different feedstuffs because you'll be adding minerals as well besides the major nutrients. Another feature here is you can add feed additives under the animal category. The one that's probably of most interest to many of us will be ionophores. Ionophores, which are legal in the United States, and some countries they are not. You can see if you check that, and then you have to put the yes block on the bottom, you're going to gain an efficiency of energetic efficiency, and also you're going to drop dry matter intake. The net effect, it doesn't change the amount of energy, but it will decrease the amount of dry matter, which will impact feed cost and also result in a better utilization by the animal. So remember, if you do this, you've got to check the yes box before you check OK, otherwise it will not have an impact. We are now at the home screen, and this starts a whole series of different screens you're going to see. They're very busy. This is a herd that has a very extensive feeding program. You can see a number of different starch sources in here. For example, Kellogg's is a byproduct feed. You've got sugar, molasses coming in there, a source of sugar. You can see we have several minerals. We have a number of vitamins in there and additives as well. So most of you won't have quite this big of a list, but you can see the tremendous power this program has at this stage of the game. So this is your home screen, and you'll see on the bottom now we've highlighted home, and we will click across all those other boxes across the bottom and look at those values using this example. Certainly there are some limitations and errors in this ration, but that's what you run this model and this program for. Another aspect that I really like about the program is called nutrition balance. So you can see a bar diagram, and many times a bar diagram is much easier to grasp than, say, looking at the actual numbers. The first one on the left shows just the basic default values. You can see dry matter, you can see crude protein, you can see phosphorus, and you can see plus or minus 10%. So in this case here, you can see on effective NDF, we're right on the edge on effective NDF, and in this example, we're a little bit short on selenium. You can then go over to the next one and expand this column and add more nutrients to it. And so you get a bigger view, and now you can see the scale has been expanded from minus 25% of requirement to 25% requirement. Remember, this is NRC. And then finally, you can look at them all. And that's what you have on the right side here. And you can see if we looked here at this one, we're short on a little bit on selenium. We're a little bit short on methionine up here. And you can see forage NDF, we're a little bit short as well. So, and now, of course, you can see we're very long in some of the trace minerals, and that'll be your decision, and we'll comment on those a bit later. I just love the bar diagram because you can see very quickly where you're really long. Okay, we've clicked on the second box now. It's called fiber, and the layout shows the actual different rations listed up there and the concentrations. Because many times, if you have too much fiber or too much lignin, you can glance up there and actually see which ones are contributing that source of fiber to the feeding program. So you can see here we have pounds listed down here, pounds per day. You can also toggle this and get this in terms of grams as well. So if you want to go metric, you can do that as well. You can also see the concentration supplied, and that's what we're going to look at. You can see this NDF is 29%, a very acceptable number. Lignin, a little bit high. We normally target 4% lignin, for example, so it's a little high on lignin. And I go to ADF, I like that number, and it's right on the money at 20%. Now, you also have other numbers there you might want to look at. You've got certainly NDF digestibility values. You've got forage NDF, lots of numbers to look at, but those are the big three I look at. And again, you can see here that I'm a little bit long on dry matter intake. Remember, these cows are being supplied almost 57 pounds of dry matter. NRC says about 52.5. So we're actually overfeeding these cows at this point on dry matter intake, but the farmer reports they eat this. And of course, this is a high production strain. Moving on to energy, a lot of numbers here. I only looked really at one number, and that's net energy in the lactation. And you can see here that we are supplying 5 mcals more than what we needed to meet the cow's requirements. This herd is a thinner herd. They're trying to get better body condition score in the cows to try and improve fertility. That's one reason why that number is a bit high. Notice the energy density is very typical at 0.77, and there's a whole number of energy values going across the bottom based on different levels of intake and different energy systems that you can look at. The next screen is protein, a very valuable screen. Again, a number of different values across the bottom. Crude protein, certainly you can see this ration is sitting at 17.7, and we are overfeeding, you can see, by almost 1.5 pounds of protein. On this farm scenario, they're very cognizant of milk protein and are afraid to reduce that number on down. The next column to me is very useful. This is the rumen undegraded protein, 36%. You can see the concentration there. If I go to the bottom, we're overfeeding about 0.5 pound of rumen undegraded protein. That's costing me some money, and you can see one of the major sources up there on rumen undegraded protein is going to be the heat-treated soy product up there, and certainly that costs me some cost money as well. I love the next column, rumen degradable protein. It's about 64%. The ratios look pretty good, but you can see I'm overfeeding about 1.25 pounds rumen degraded protein. I would expect my MUNs to be modestly high at this with this feeding program here. The real problem is the higher dry matter intakes on the ration and the 17.7% protein. A lot of herds are now feeding 16.5 to 17. So very quickly this computer program indicates where the problem is. Now don't lose sight of the next column. To me, this is the power. MP stands for metabolizable protein. Here comes your model. So this is estimating what the bacteria are going to produce and what's happening to the RUP in the digestive tract. And you can see we're overfeeding by about 2/3 of a pound of RUP. That's a lot. And in this situation, we would like to drop these protein numbers on back. The farmer is quite concerned he's going to lose milk production as far as that goes. There's your digestibility. You can see it's about 85% rumen degradable digestibility. I don't pay a lot of attention to that, but that would certainly change if you use poor quality proteins. And then you've got some other factors on the right side, different years, different ways of calculations, and different energy and protein relationships as far as bound protein. Next, we go to carbohydrates. It's my favorite table because this is what really is fueling the rumen at this stage of the game. Again, you can see all our feeds are listed and our concentrations. Let's go across a couple of the big ones. The first one is NFC. I'm not a big fan of it anymore. NFC usually considers sugar, starches, organic acids, and soluble fibers and pectin. And so it's kind of a mixed one. I'd rather go across to the real true ones. And the first one that catches my eye will be starch. And you can see this ration sits at 24% starch. If anything, it's on the lower end. Most people are targeting 24 to 26% starch at this point. Notice NRC has, or this, I should say, the Spartan program has no requirements here. So you're really on your own on this one here, and that's because NRC has no starch requirements, and that's true. NRC does not have a starch requirement, but obviously we know what it does in the digestive tract and the rumen of cattle. The next one I go across to is sugar, and you can see we're running 4.5% sugar. Most of my rations, if you're really going to push high-producing cows, want to be around 5 to 6% sugar, even though our molasses is at a fairly modest level in this diet. Next number I really like is soluble fiber. I like to be between 10 or 12% soluble fiber. This one's right on the money at 11.4, and you can see some of the big players there. Citrus pulp is a big player in this program. Soybean meal is a player in this program as well. Now, some people look at vitamin E and say, boy, that's going to be a player. Remember, we're only feeding 1/100th of a pound of vitamin E. And so that's the carrier. So obviously, this vitamin E carrier that's being used in this ration is one of the byproduct feeds that have a high-quality fiber source. That's the 3 key numbers I like. The one I think we're going to really watch in the future is going to look at the degradation rate of the starch. And you can see this one is 70% of the starch is degraded, and we're going to be looking at this in the future as we look at adjusting both rumen and small intestine digestibility rates. Lipids has got a lot of information that we probably aren't using very much yet, but we will in the future. The big number everybody watches, the first one, that's ether extract. That's a nice name for fats and oils. You can see this ration sits at 5.5%, right on the money. And you can see the big hitter up there is tallow at 99%, fuzzy cottonseed. So very quickly you can glance up to see, well, if I wanted more, which ones would I add? Or if I think it's too high, which ones would I pull back? And then I got my fatty acids listed here. That's a form of the fats in the feeding program. Saturated fatty acids, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. You can see I have all different types of fat sources listed here. And the one that some of us are watching are PUFAs. That's polyunsaturated fatty acids. And when you get probably over about a pound a day, you're on the high end. And so this one is a little on the high end, which could have some impact on butterfat test. And if you look up here, you can see where some of those PUFAs are coming from. You can see soybean meal is sitting at 61%, Amino Plus, another protein source sitting there. And so you can see where the PUFAs are coming in. If we had corn distillers grains in here, that number would also be modestly high as well. So this one has some really futuristic applications, and today I'm not maybe working this part of the table hard enough. Minerals are very straightforward. We will not walk you through this because you've learned this hopefully in some of the earlier modules that we've discussed earlier. But you can see here are all the macro minerals as we go across, and you can see the supply, the requirement, and the difference. And of course, then you also have concentrations. You can see in this diet, phosphorus catches my eye very quickly as being excessive. We should take DiCal out, but the herd is not wanting to do that because they want to maintain fertility. You and I would argue that's way too high or certainly excessive. We could save some money, but you will lose those arguments. You can see the other numbers look pretty much in line very nicely. Here is your DCAD over here. You can see the DCAD is 22. That's a plus 22 per 100 grams. And so that would be certainly acceptable for a lactating cow. Under heat stress, we want this number up over 300. And so you can actually work with this number by using like potassium carbonate or products like that. You also have the total ash, which may be of interest to you, but probably not as valuable as some of the other numbers. Here comes my trace minerals. Notice we make no differentiation between organic and inorganic at this stage, even though we do have that listed. You see a Veil of 4 listed there. That's one of your organic trace mineral sources. And there they are listed across, and you can see again the concentrations. That's the one I watch. I go across that quickly to see how close they are to NRC, and they all look really quite good at this stage of the game. The selenium is slightly lower. We could increase that to 0.3% legally here, but a fairly nice profile. NRC also does absorbable minerals in some of these, and many of us don't have a real strong handle on that at this stage of the game, but it's all there if in fact you want to look at how much of the zinc is absorbed or how much of the iodine is absorbed or how much of the copper is absorbed, a feature of the NRC 2001, and of course that's what this program is based on. We then go to vitamins, very straightforward, no big surprise. You can see all the vitamins are coming from premixes, and that's what we like to do. So we're not giving any credit to the corn silage or the alfalfa silage for having vitamin E or vitamin A at this stage of the game. This is all supplemental. However, if you feel strongly that you have vitamin E in your alfalfa, you could enter a value and it would calculate it in for you. Again, you can see these vitamin levels requirements are fairly modest at this stage of the game, and you can see we bumped up both the vitamin A and the vitamin E levels at higher numbers, and I'm very comfortable, especially with the E number. We then look at amino acids, and of course, this is the only way you can do this. You must have a model, and this is a very nice ration. We look at it at this stage of the game. You can see we're running about 6.5% lysine, and we have about 2.4% methionine at this point. You look down then at the levels down here. You can see we're right on the money. Very seldom will you see a ration this close. Now, be well aware this is NRC numbers at this stage of the game, and so other programs will have different amino acid requirement guidelines. And that's one thing to realize, that every software program has different equations and different requirements, and that's based on whoever did the programming. Here comes your cost numbers, and again, very valuable. You can update these, and of course, these cost numbers, I wish they were right, just reflect what default values were in Spartan3 when they came out, and we all know right now our feed costs per day are probably up around $6.50 for high-producing cows, but you enter these all in, and that's a powerful number, and you can see we have both costs per day and then purchase feed costs. Depending on which box you check there, you can separate those away, separated from what's raised on the farm versus what is being purchased. Bottom line for me is you have to buy it all either from yourself or from a commercial feed company. Here comes another feature that was in Spartan 2. We have some blank columns. So if you want to track threonine, or if you want to put chromium in, or if you have a certain type of protein you want to track, or a certain other feed fraction, you can enter the feeds in those feeds, and the computer will calculate this for you and give you that nutrient concentration and the amount supplied. Again, remember, we can toggle back and forth. This is pounds because this is an Illinois presentation. However, if you're in Mexico or Canada or foreign country, you can make this in kilograms and grams. You can toggle that back and forth with a keystroke. The next screen looks at environmental factors. That's really a neat feature. You can see over here we can look at two factors. We can look at temperature stress, which would be heat stress and or cold stress, and activity level, which usually means walking, and of course extremely valuable in pasture. So we then went over and looked on the right and saw what those factors look like. So now on the upper slide you can see I took the temperature up to moderate heat stress, and you can see it raised this up to 114%, and we have a dry matter adjustment as well. You can compare that, you can to the left side what that number would have been had you not adjusted for, in this case, heat stress. The next one down, we went down and changed the amount of work, and you can see this increases the energy requirement for maintenance by about 40%. Looks like this animal is walking about a quarter of a mile a day. By the way, that could be going to and back and forth to a milking parlor, milking 3 times a day, walking from one of the far pens. So don't ignore this one if you're not on pasture, because it will have some impact as well. And you can then see how it's changing on the bottom there in the ration. You can see we've added about 4 mcals. I'm on the bottom box now. At this point, you can see the dry matter indication at this point and how we will change the energy density. We go to the top one, we'll go back there, you can see we changed the energy requirement by about 1.5 mcals a day, but look at the dry matter it took away. So this is a pretty heavy tax, as we would say, and would really change the energy density to the point that maybe we can't balance the ration anymore. Another nice feature is a group setting. In other words, I can indicate how many animals we have in a group, and then I can adjust that based on what they're actually eating. So here we've got the high group. I've indicated 100 cows in this group, and then I will check OK, otherwise it won't do anything. So we then come in and have another feature, which is creating a mix. And this is another neat feature. You can identify using keystrokes in the directions. You can, for example, in this case, I decided to keep all my forages out, my fuzzy cottonseed out of the mix here. And I have these other ones I'm going to add in, and I take and identify those. Then I can go in and have a new mix made. The computer automatically makes that new mixture out of all those dotted symbols over there. And now I have something up at the top of the screen that says new mix. So I have 18.5 pounds, rough rounded off, dry matter in this new mix. If I then strike the plus sign, it will unmix it below. And now you can see what was in that 18.5 pound mixture listed there below. And here we see a partial list just for clarity. Now we can look at the nutrient composition of this new mix. So you can see the fiber, energy, protein, carbohydrates, minerals, trace minerals of all what's in that premix. So now I've got a feed tag. I've now generated a feed tag here, and it's on an 89% dry matter basis, which means it's an official feed tag that you could actually paste on your bag or supply to your user. Next, I have a mix report. We can go in then and mix this feed, and I can change the mixing order. You can see here we are mixing from the highest to the lowest level. So now I have pounds as fed, because that's how most feed mills are going to do it. And here's my batch size. So I'm making a 10,000 pound batch size. Notice that was entered above there. So if you want a 5,000 pound batch size or whatever size you want, you can see I'm going to add to this batch 2,780 pounds of soybean meal. And you can read the rest of the numbers on down here. And we went from highest to lowest, or we could change those and move those around if it's convenient for the feed mill or the on-farm mixer. Now we're going to look at another output screen. This is another one on the mix report. Here you can go in and you can see the 1X means that was that 10,000 pound batch size. You said, well, I need to make up half a batch because I'm missing one of the ingredients. Well, now you can see there's a 5,000 pound batch down there, and then there's a 2X, which would be a 20,000 pound batch if you decided you're getting a bigger truckload at this point. So you have that flexibility as well. If I then go to page 2 of the report, now I have that same summary that we saw earlier in an output format here, showing all the different information that we have in that feed mix in case you'd want to compare one batch to another if you start changing ingredients, for example. Another report we can look at, and that is the batch report, a very powerful report, especially on the farm. I've taken my standard ration now at about 104 pounds per day. I have 100 cows in that pen, but the weather's changed and my cows eat more feed because it's cooling off. Or it's heat stress and my cows eat less. So now I can go in and actually have the computer tell me how to make a batch for more or fewer cows. I can pick whatever group increment I want. In this example, it's 10 cow differential. That could be 2 cows, it could be 1 cow, it could be 20 cows at this stage of the game. And then I check OK, and away we go. Now we are looking at the batch report from our previous screen, and you can see, based on that information over here, our target was 100 cows, and it's bolded. It's in darker print, and you can see there is that 10,400 pound batch size at this point. For some reason, the cows ate more feed, and I'm going to lead this cow, so I could go to the next column, and if I want to feed for 10 more cows, that could be because I want to feed more to each cow, or maybe I add 10 cows to the group. Either one of those scenarios would happen. And now you can see I don't have to go back to the computer and rerun all this. I can just go to my feeder and have him follow whichever column we're feeding at today. Another nice feature, and this is on page 2 of that report, is on the batch report, looks at changes in dry matter. And so now you can see my corn silage was listed at 31.2% dry matter. If the corn silage gets wetter, which means less dry matter, I'm going to add more total pounds. So if my corn silage in a different part of the bunker or a different silo or a different source, if I went to, say, the top line, it got very, very wet at 27%, or it rained tonight, or we got a snow episode, now I have to go in over there to my 100 cow batch. Instead of adding 5,250 pounds of corn silage that I knew was at 31.2% dry matter, I now add 6,022 pounds. So I've just added more water. I have the same dry matter intake. I have another wet ingredient there, alfalfa silage, and again, that same principle applies. So again, if we can estimate differences in dry matter shifts, I can very quickly make my TMR or my batch much more accurate. This simply shows a summary report. It's a bit busy. It has lots of information on it, but I really like it. It's a much more involved than what Spartan3 had, but you can see there sits my feeds there with a very short summary of some of the key nutrients, and then I have all my nutrient summaries there across the bottom. I also have some numbers up there on ratios, which we'll come back and see a bit later, up at the top as well. And so it really breaks it out very, very nicely for me. And again, you will find the roles you really want to follow here, but it's a nice 2-page report. Another feature is the office report. So if you like paper, here we go. And again, you can see, and now instead of getting two pages, I end up getting 6 pages of reports here. It has other information on it. I very seldomly print this off here. I like the previous report that we had. Another one you have that was actually at the top of your report, but you can always see this before you print or look at it, and this is under what they call ration ratios. That's the RR at the top of the report. I love this report here. The one I really watch is the second block. To me, it says, based on what the cow is eating, this ration has enough energy for 98 pounds of milk and 92 pounds of protein. When we teach this in class, we want these numbers within 2 to 3 pounds of each other. And we already admitted our problem is that we are actually overfeeding energy. And so if anything else, I would bring this energy down to about 92, 91 pounds of milk. Remember, this computer already is adjusting for body condition score and growth, and had the cow been pregnant, some pregnancy requirement that already was built in. So we're really overfeeding energy. This is what I would call an imbalanced ration at this stage of the game. Another one to look at is up there at the top is energy corrected milk. ECM stands for energy corrected milk, and remember, this would be looking at the feed efficiency number we talk about. This is 1.31. This is not a good efficiency because the dry matter is so high relative to the amount of milk that we're getting. We'd like to see this number around 1.5. Energy-corrected milk means it's been adjusted for both butterfat test and milk protein test, and that's the only difference between the typical number we call the feed efficiency number. The feed cost number is powerful and, again, a useful one to take a look at as well. Over there is some nutrient management information for some of us. Certainly manure loading with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium is going to be an important factor. So again, if we try to reduce some of these minerals and some of these nutrients, we can reflect that very nicely here in this part of the program. And then, of course, we've got lysine to methionine ratio listed there. You've got certainly some forage NDF numbers there as well. Just a powerful point that you really want to look at this, especially when you're building the ration and before you print. So you've had a quick overview. If you're intrigued about this, here is where you can order a free demo on the website. This is the actual website itself. There's the address. And I encourage us to download this and look at it. So in summary, Spartan3 is a new program that provides users new information using NRC recommendations 2001 and a rumen prediction model. As I mentioned earlier, other programs can provide the same information. Be aware, though, that their answers may be slightly different, and you have to get used to this ration. You'll do some playing with that to see what it fits. So you may want to feed a little extra protein based on how your cows respond to these numbers or a difference in amino acid profile at this point. And finally, I feel a rumen model program is critical, very important as cows and herds reach higher levels of milk production, and certainly that's where we're going in the future. Well, that completes our module on Spartan3. Thanks. Have a great day.